Sometimes they do.
And we're live streaming.
Yeah, what you say?
We're good?
Yep.
Wait until the exact moment. Well, and welcome everyone to the Lincolnville Selectmen's meeting. It is the 24th of October. And before we get going, I would just ask everyone to bow their heads for a moment in silence for a dearly beloved and lifelong servant of the town of Lincolnville, great family man, member of this community, Bernard Young, who passed away. And so we'll just offer some thanks up to him. Thank you, and we offer our condolences to his family and are just so grateful that we had the chance to work with him. So before we get going, Kern, would you care to read the quote of the evening?
I'd be glad to. It is not our abilities that make us who we are. It is our choices. Albus Dumbledore.
Thank you very much. And at this point, I would like to open the podium for any non-agenda items. Seeing no one jumping up and waving, I am going to move along to the administrator's report, please.
Beyond what's on the agenda, just a reminder that absentee ballots are available for November 8th regular voting. Property tax stabilization program for senior citizens, the deadline is December 1st. And dog licenses, all dog licenses expire at the end of the year and you can renew them now. Please do so. As of January 1, there's a state-imposed late fee of $25 that we can't waive and can't whatever, and we'll track you down. So pay the $6 now rather than $31 later. I think that's it.
That's it. Any questions for David on that? All right, let's move along to upcoming meetings and announcements.
All meetings are here at the town office unless announced otherwise. The Lakes and Ponds Committee is meeting Tuesday, October 25th, 7 p.m. The Board of Selectmen will have a tour of the Lincolnville Sewer District plan on McKay Road on Tuesday, November 1st, 10 a.m. Lincolnville Central School is meeting on Monday. Yeah, that's right. November 7th, 6 p.m. at the Lincolnville Central School. Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the gymnasium of the Lincolnville Central School. Planning Board is scheduled to meet on Wednesday, November 9th, 7 p.m. Conservation Commission is scheduled to meet Thursday, November 10th, 4 p.m. The town office will be closed on Friday, November 11th in observance of Veterans Day. Recreation Commission is scheduled to meet Monday, November 14th, 4 p.m. And the Board of Selectmen meet next on Monday, November 14th at 6 p.m. And there is a broadband committee meeting that I don't have on this list.
Yes, because I didn't tell you yet. So it is on Thursday, November 3rd at 6 p.m. at the town office.
Yes.
And because I'm also guilty, like this gentleman here, I didn't get it into the town administrator, but the cemetery trustees will be meeting on the 9th here at the town office at 5:30.
Great. Thank you. If there are no other meetings hiding out in the wings, let's move along to, are there any upcoming community events anyone wishes to share? Seeing none, let's move along to the meeting minutes from the 11th of October.
I move the board approve the October 11th, 2022 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And next up, we have representatives from the Lincolnville Hills Project Committee here to present to the board.
Hi, my name is Dave Kelly, 414 Youngtown Road, and I'm the president, I guess, of the Lincolnville Hills Project, or forced into that role, so to speak. But I am here with Dwight Emerson, who is our secretary, who is going to give a brief presentation and have a more visual aspect so we can see all the work that's being done so far and we continue to do. And then in our absence is Hayden Sears, who's our treasurer. He has had previous engagements. He's unfortunately not be able to join us. But our hope is to just kind of give you a brief understanding of what we've done so far, all volunteer hours, all community, privately donated funds. And we are reestablishing park, all the land on the Lincolnville side of the park that had previously been used for blueberry fields or public access, and that has been just overtaken by the forest. And we're just been working, as much as we possibly can to reestablish those fields for the sake of recreational purposes, for no other purposes than to just the history parts that we've lost due to the forest. Some of these places that the families can no longer go to in the park because the forest is just taken over, and some of the views that we're losing. So that's kind of the overall goal of this project, and just trying to make it as viable as possible. The state park has been a huge key piece for us. We've been working with them. They have provided not only access to the park, but also volunteers as well as park employees to assist us in this project. So I know Dwight wanted to give a kind of a brief visual of what we've done so far, and just kind of let you all be aware of what we're doing. Thank you.
My name is Dwight Emerson. I live in Youngtown at the junction of Route 52 and Youngtown Road. Some of you may know me. We have a long history with Lincolnville. Can everybody see like this with the lights, or should they be dimmed, or what would be let me put the first slide up. Don't anybody get up and walk away with lights? I'd be tripping at it. Better? Yes. Now we can all see the screen. And I apologize. I'm 78 years old now, and I'm not completely savvy with changes in technology. It's a struggle for me. I think most of you will recognize this is the junction of Youngtown Road and Route 52. So this is Youngtown Road here. The 4 sites that the Lincolnville Hills Project is focusing on are what we're calling the Millip-Wright Field, Poverty Knoll, the Cameron Field, and what we call the Cameron Knob. Historically, these fields were in agriculture for well over 100 years. In my lifetime, they were owned by Fred Milliken and operated as commercial blueberry fields. They, upon he and his wife Marion's passing, their son Drew determined that within their family they could no longer operate them as commercial blueberry fields. Made the decision rather than to sell them to private entities, to transfer them or eventually have them translated into the state park system. And they did that. And in doing that, it was recognized that unless the state took over them as blueberry fields, that they would revert back to the natural habitat and forest cover that they were well over 100 years ago. The state initially was going to operate them as commercially blueberry fields. They contracted with a commercial blueberry to do it. In the first year, he took the blueberries and then broke the contract and didn't do anything else with these fields. So then it became evident that these fields were going to revert, and the scenic values and the other values of these sites would be lost. So This is what it looked like after the transition had occurred, and you can start to see some of the vegetation starting to grow. This is in what we call the Millerite field, the upper field. And you can see a pretty good view of Lincolnville from here. Moody Mountain and Levenseller Mountain and the lake. If you are there, you can zoom in and see some of the many features that Lincolnville has. This was the historic road, part of the historic road that went from Camden to Lincolnville before the turnpike was built. There are many cellars here. In fact, there's a toll cellar right here where if you came over, you had to pay a toll if you were taking cattle or sheep or coming over across a wagon. So this has significant historical importance to Lincolnville. When the land was transferred, Sheila Hart, Sheila McFarland, married name, served as a person that facilitated the trust in the transfer, and they placed 2 plaques at 2 of the locations representing what was being transferred to the state park. And Marion was a young. Most of this property in this area was worked by the Young family. There were many names. We wrestled with what to call these different sites and ended up calling them what I referred to earlier. So in the absence of any activity, this is what you're going to see instead of what you saw on the previous slide. This represents the growth of about 5 to 8 years worth of growth if nothing else is done. So the views you saw earlier will be this, would have been this if nothing had been done. Rising to the challenge, local townspeople decided we wanted to do something, and there was an effort to raise some funds to pay for machinery and fuel. There were over 60 contributors financially. The donations ranged from $5 to several thousands of dollars. So there was good wide community support for this project. That combined with the equipment and the skill set that we have in the people that live in Lincolnville, we were able to, 2 years ago, initiate a recovery program. And our plan is every 2 years to do a maintenance program to maintain the historic values of these 4 sites. And you know these 2 gentlemen, and this equipment allows us to do this in an economic and efficient way. This fall, in October, what we call the Cameron Knob was both maintained and a further area rehabilitated. The state, Camden Hill State Park, the director, we call her Sunshine. Charlene Hood is her name, is very supportive of this effort. 5 of those individuals are state park foresters. They're trained, equipped with a variety of types of equipment, safety equipment, cutting equipment. We have 5 volunteers from Lincolnville. Again, these people were picked because of their enthusiasm and also their experience and expertise. And you can see on the track of the rather substantial shredder that Rosie has attached to it. And this was a very successful operation. This was the second one. There was one done 2 years ago also, with the state being involved in this activity. They recognize the importance of this project. They are limited in their funding. They are willing to participate with us, but they cannot afford to do everything that we can do as the Lincolnville Hills project. This is another photograph of the Cameron Knob area. You can see that the material was cut and then shredded, and then the material blown onto the trail, substantially improving the trail. For those that of you who are aware of carbon and the influence of carbon on our atmosphere and on our environment, it's the notion that this is a carbon neutral activity. The carbon that is shredded is released very slowly, and the vegetation that grows up removes the equivalent carbon of what's being deposited. Within 1 year, we get this, which is the low bush wild blueberry plant. And it's astounding to see how quickly that came back in some of the sites. Even though this isn't operated as a commercial blueberry operation, I can tell you there are a substantial number of blueberries up there, were up there this year. There's also scenic values, which many of you are aware of. This is actually from Poverty Knoll, a place that a lot of people don't particularly know about, but it was historically a very important site for people who didn't have housing, but the town did provide housing for them. And can you imagine being homeless and having a view like that? Recently, we had a October 22nd, the day of the Great Disappointment walk that is provided every year, weather permitting. This is at that same site. We call it the Millerite Field. Again, you can see the topographic features, and I've been up here and had people from out of state walking in this area, and I would talk to them, and they said, we would contribute money to keep this open. This is really a unique feature that Lincolnville has. And all of you have seen a picture of a blueberry, but these are the blueberries that were there this year.
Those are big blueberries, right?
And in conclusion, my nephew, who is a graduate of West Point and Wharton School of Economics, a recent graduate of War College, former battalion commander, now in Washington and the Pentagon in our nuclear deterrent program. This is his two youngest daughters. They represent the fifth generation of my family that has benefited from the values that these fields in Lincolnville provides. And our hope is that that can continue. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions people might have.
So Dwight, you said you're, guys, I'm sorry, Dave Kelly. Anyway, you guys have started on the maintenance phase. You've got the clearing done that you'd like to done. Now you can do that?
Not 100%. At this point, we're just kind of, you saw the level that all those fields have been overgrown on the left-hand side of that one photo. So basically, we're just having to take swaths as much as we can in a day.
Yeah.
And we're trying to we have percentages down of what we've been able to bring back. But the hope is to continue not only to clear, but also you can see on that same photo, you can see in a year how much profit will be
To keep
thrown
it
out.
down, yeah.
So we're going to continue to do community efforts. The one hiccup that we have is not only the weather, getting machines in there, but the park does not like to have large machines coming in during the high tourist season.
Yeah.
So we have limited windows that we can get in there. But Hayden had made our treasurer made a suggestion of getting in there with a lot of volunteers and just doing lockers and just kind of doing as much as we can with just hands. And the park is willing to let us do that without supervision or kind of going through the red tape. So the maintenance is just going to be ongoing, but the major work happens in spurts, and that's for those 4 different selected fields.
So I failed to say that the total acreage that we've targeted is about 25 acres. And in the handout that I provided, I gave some statistics on what's been accomplished. The Cameron Field has been 95% recovered, and it's now in the maintenance phase. The Cameron Knob, we estimate, is 33% recovered, Poverty Knoll 25% covered, and the Millerite Field 65% recovered. Our hope is, or our plan, not our hope, but our plan is to continue through next year and increase that recovery rate. And I gave some estimates of what we what we hope to do there. I spent 30 plus years in Washington, D.C., and am well aware of the importance of governing institutions, particularly as they change hands from one group to another. And our goal is to institutionalize this activity. In particular, the Camden Hill State Park director probably won't be there much more than 2 years. And it's important that whoever follows her in her footsteps have the comforting notion that this project will continue and is supported by the town. And written institutional documents are very helpful in accomplishing that goal. In addition to the handout I gave on the progress, we've crafted a draft resolution to have the town support the goal, not us, but the goal of keeping these sites cleared and the values that they represent to the community for now and into the future. We also intend to use the visioning process and include, hopefully, in the revisions to the comprehensive town plan, again showing the next succession of the Camden Hill State Park, that there is true deep-rooted interest in the Camden and in Lincolnville to support this effort.
Wonderful.
Any other-
Questions? No?
I was just curious, when all the sites are cleared, how many hours would you say it'll take annually to maintain?
So that would represent primarily brush hogging on some field. We tailor the activity to the site. Some sites are amenable to brush hogging. Other sites are more amenable to this newer technology. The people involved in the newer technology, we try to limit it because this machine is a powerful machine. It's 95 horsepower, and when it mulches a tree, it throws stuff 300 feet out. So we try to keep that to 2 people, 3 at most, photographer. Staying very clear. So then it's a function of how quickly the equipment operator can operate his equipment. And I would say, once we get to the maintenance stage, I'm going to guess maybe for each field, maintenance now, once every 2 years, not every year, maybe 200 hours
For each field?
for each field. Okay. Is that, you agree with
On the
that?
maintenance side?
On the maintenance. The
To
maintenance.
answer your question, probably the total thing of clearing it and getting it ready is probably around 150 hours. Then, like the town has a plan where they do hot topping every so many years, they space it out so we're not hot topping the whole town at once, and then that we're planning having the same kind of deal where this year, we're going to maintain this portion of the millwright field. Then next year, it's on a rotation basis, so there'll be road, because there's no way that we're gonna have enough time that the state will let us in there for an extended period of time. The state's not gonna let us in there for 50 hours straight. It's just not gonna happen, because they don't wanna stop the general public from having the privilege of using the facilities. So we're adapting to them. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's gonna be on a rotation program on maintenance thing. So some of this later stuff might be 5 years before we're gonna be able to mow that field again on that particular field. But all told, probably 150 hours to do the total project.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Karen.
So it's interesting, all of those fields were blueberry fields at one time, hundreds of years ago.
I think some of it was pasture before blueberries. It was a combination. I know in my lifetime, since the late 1940s on, it has always been in blueberry. But I think it's logical to think, given the agricultural base of the town at that time, I think it goes back over 200 years.
Yeah. So what's real interesting is there's been a fair amount of trying to get it back to where it is by, mowing and whatever, and what have you. But the blueberries that you showed the pictures of, I think it's important to say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's not a reseed. That's all natural. 100%
Correct.
Natural Maine blueberries.
That's correct.
And the park does not allow us as an entity to hire, to be burned, to keep those poplars down. They will not allow that. I petitioned Augusta to do that, and they will not allow that to occur. As a non-park employee, they won't allow that machinery in for the sake of liability, which I understand. So unfortunately, that increases our need for maintenance using, man hours and volunteer hours. But it's all native plants.
Native Maine blueberry.
100%. We're not reseeding a single thing.
It's just interesting that getting rid of the overgrowth brings the native Maine blueberry back.
Within a year.
Yeah, and that is great. Thank you very much.
And just for the sake of those out there that may be listening or documentation, we're not clear cutting 100%, making it a pure, like a hayfield. Because we have left multiple trees in specific locations for habitat, wildlife, and, some of the birds left over from, a couple hundred years ago, the Miller Walk, they're trying to get to the top, because they might be raptured or something. So they need a place to rest on the way out. So, no, we're not completely 100% click cutting. So just so you know that it's not a giant click cut.
Nice.
Thank you. Well, we have before us, if there are no further questions for any of these gentlemen, we do have a resolution before us that I would be interested in hearing a motion for.
I move that it be resolved that the Lincolnville Board of Selectmen support the goal of recovering and maintaining historic Lincolnville hilltop sites that have been incorporated into the Camden Hills State Park system, as these scenic historic sites continue to provide hikers, skiers, picnickers, birders, hunters, wildlife enthusiasts, and wildlife itself the necessary open space for multi-use recreation and fire protection, and preserving these historic sites and the treasured values they provide the community are important for both current and future generations, that the town administrator be instructed to prepare a formal resolution for board signatures and public dissemination.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Well done. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Thank you all very much, and thank you very much for coming in and giving us this update and all your hard work.
Thank you.
And next up on the agenda, we have Susan Silverio.
Thank you again for your time. I'd like to be giving you a report on the heart and soul visioning process. We have officers now of your town appointed committee that can do that. Tomorrow is the Zoom interview with the foundation for the final stage of the matching funds. So we're getting close to that final process. And then we will be able to launch this process, visioning process. But tonight, I'm coming to you with a much more boring thing. It's old business, and I really actually need your help trying to understand how to proceed. I gave you a couple of handouts that are in your packet. One is the housing committee. Part of the inventory that we're doing for updating the comprehensive plan is going to all the committees. So we've been to you as the Board of Selectmen, and we're still in the process of incorporating the results of that workshop with you. Lisa McLaughlin's going to the Lakes and Ponds Committee. Again, we're appealing to the committees to find out, their wisdom in how they're proceeding with the mandates they have from the town charter and the previous comprehensive plan. So one of the committees listed in the compilation of the goals and strategies in the 2006 plan, the first committee listed is the Affordable Housing Committee, probably because it starts with an A. So we have what we've been trying to do, what we've been doing is dividing up this task because it's monumental, it's comprehensive. And so, as you know, I had chosen this particular chapter to focus on, the housing chapter. I felt it was timely, and many other towns are addressing the current crises in housing. So I thought it would be simple. I'm going to what is listed here as the ongoing goals of the Affordable Housing Committee, and it's continue to work with regional organizations, seek grants from rural development for upgrading mobile homes, look into the applicability of incentives for development of affordable housing using within new subdivisions, design ordinances and standards that create an atmosphere of flexibility towards site plans. So I thought this is pretty straightforward. Two of these involve working with the Board of Selectmen. The other two involve working with the Land Use Committee, which no longer exists. So my hope was that a committee would do some study of current trends, our current situation, and also the new possibilities that are now available for regional planning for some of these things. So it's not new. It was the part of the charge of the original committee. And in your packet, I put in some quotes there just so you can see that this is something that's been part of the plan for 16 years. And then I added that it's also according to the 2020 process that was called Visioning 2020, when 60 residents met to discuss the future of Lincolnville, and density and housing came right up to the top of their concerns. And then I referenced the Maine Municipal Association goals, which Selectman Ray brought to you a couple meetings ago. Affordable, decent, safe housing, increased access to workforce housing, etc. So I was hoping this would be simple. Maybe it's not something that you want to pursue, but I wanted to say that as we update this plan, we have some mandates from the state. And in order for us to submit a plan that they're going to approve before it can go to our voters, under housing is create or continue to support a community affordable / workforce housing committee and or regional affordable housing coalition. This is really expected by the state. It's not really optional. I'm not asking for any funding. I'm just saying, I'm suggesting that a few concerned citizens could do some careful consideration of what might be possible, perhaps by private individuals, make sure we're not interfering with what private individuals can do with their own property, and also look into other sources of funding. I'm not suggesting town funding here at all, but it just seems like this is an expectation on the part of the state. And before I put it in the comp plan again, I wanted to just bring that to your attention. So,
Questions for Susan?
Susan, do you have a number of people in the town that you know would be interested in serving on a housing committee?
I've talked to one who already offered to serve and was told that there is no plan for a committee. I know of others who are interested in the possibility of what is possible by private initiative. Whether they want to sit on a committee or not, I don't know. Another person I had targeted may be my personal consultant. But so I know at least one, I know of one person who called and offered to serve.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions for Susan? Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked that question, Josh, because what comes up for me is we're having trouble filling our committees that we need just around the town. And if we throw another committee up there, I wonder if it would be, if anyone would participate in it, and will it take away from the other committees? The other thing is there's a charge, which you just said, from the state that we have to provide affordable housing, and I think we work regularly. This is my personal opinion, but I think we work regularly very hard to make sure the taxpayers of this town of Lincolnville can afford to stay in their house. So I feel that we, in some way, do that. I'm not saying that we don't need to have a committee to explore affordable housing, but I hear all of these ideas, and I've seen some on paper and this and that. This beautiful little town that we all love, I personally, and I am not in any way speaking for anybody else here in this room, I personally don't want to see apartments shoved in between houses on Main Street just because we need affordable housing. I don't think that's the answer here. In my mind, and what has always been in my heart, and what I've always worked hard for this town, since I've been a representative for the taxpayers of this town, is that they be able to afford the taxes for the place that they're living in, or that they own for the town of Lincolnville. A lot of people would probably have a different definition of affordable housing. But right now, I think it's important to keep our taxpayers comfortable in their house by them being able to afford their own taxes. When someone says to me, we need to have affordable housing, and I think I had a very uncomfortable conversation with a previous selectman, I'm not willing to inflict another expense for someone to live in this town on another taxpayer, because it's hard enough to pay your own taxes here, let alone somebody else's. My own personal opinion, I hear what you're saying. Every town is doing this. Maybe I look at it in a different way, but I feel it's important to look at it that way.
Anyone else?
I just have a clarifying question. When you said the state, there's a mandate, did you mean there's a mandate that for our comprehensive plan to be passed, it needs a housing committee, or we need affordable housing?
I'm not saying affordable housing, I'm saying an affordable or workforce housing committee to study our ordinances. You know, it's not going to cost us anything to adjust, make sure that our ordinances don't prohibit people from building smaller houses, rather than having to purchase land out, take up former farmland and sprawl out of town. You know, could a young family who grew up here be able to build a starter home. You know, now it seems like everything, we know that the housing market has skyrocketed. How do we address that, you know, as a town? Or do we just want to become a town of large, expensive second and third homes and seasonal rentals when the children who grow up here can't find a place that they can afford to build or purchase? So that's one. So to answer your question, no, we're not required to provide affordable housing on poverty, no, at all. But we are required to show that we are studying this by having a couple or three people who are willing to take a good hard look at our ordinances. We have all we can do to work with this comprehensive plan. A lot of ordinances have been passed in the last 16 years. You know, let's take a good look at them and see if they prohibit smaller affordable homes from being built.
Yeah, Steve.
I think part of what I had read in the past, I think you started to mention it, was something about the town can have their own potential approach to it. There's also a regional component.
Right.
And to me, one of the things we're going to see is that any individual town is not going to solve this.
Exactly.
It's going to be a regional effort.
We're really going to have to think about this on a regional level, and we'd probably get more bang for our buck if we were able to cooperate with Hope and Camden and some other, Northport, our surrounding communities to address this in the long term.
Meaning have
A regional housing.
like a member or two members
Yeah.
from each town collectively coming together to study that?
Exactly.
Well, there's now the Mid-Coast Council of Governments, which has a staff of regional planners in housing as well as transportation and climate change. So these are the kind of experts that we don't have that expertise. And we don't have that big picture, and we don't have the maps. They have very sophisticated maps now. So, and also, for example, on the private front, there's now, the Rotary Club has established the Mid-Coast Housing Trust, which is holding land in perpetuity as affordable housing land. And they're still working out the details of that, but what it means is if someone in Lincolnville said, well, I don't want to sell I try to give you an example. If I had a small house that I wanted to keep as an affordable house for future generations in my family or somebody else's, I didn't want somebody to build a McMansion there. I couldn't prevent a future owner from doing whatever they wanted to their land, but I could place that land or that piece of property in the Mid-Coast Housing Trust, and there would be covenants that would govern. A person could own that house, and they would develop equity in it, but they would always have to sell it with only a certain margin of profit, not an exorbitant profit. So it would now this is a 40-year-old model that's used around the world now to try to preserve the affordable housing that we have. And I hear what you're saying, Kurt, and I also
What was the name of that again?
It's called the Mid-Coast Housing Trust, and it was started by the Rotary Club in Camden because they're concerned as business owners that they couldn't find any place for their workers, their staff and employees to live.
Mike, you had a question.
Yeah, I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, well, I just wanted to back up and say I really appreciate you keeping our property taxes lower, and I really appreciate the senior benefit of living here for 50 years and being 65. So I appreciate that effort on the part of the town.
Yeah. No, what I was going to say is that, Steve, I hear you about the regional approach. My guess is the town will eventually have to go that way in order to get anything done, I'm sure. And Kern, I think we're doing a decent job of trying to keep the taxes down so people can afford to stay where they are. All that being said, especially hearing that the state considers this a task force to be a necessary condition for the comp plan, which you already have going, sunk money into. It seems to me it would not hurt at all to have a charge drafted up to get the ball rolling and have a few people, if we could get them, if they volunteer, who would be willing to address these questions. A, does a regional approach work? B, are taxes proper? All of these questions, look into the bank that you're talking about, look into the land bank, whatever, look at the ordinances, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't see why we can't get it going now with the draft charge. Of course, it takes more than it happening right now. We've got draft the charge, approve the draft, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, all that takes time.
Of course, but there's also, I know, the option of us adding this notion of housing to our the workshop that we're going to have on priorities here. But I'd kind of like to see if we can get this ball rolling, if we get a couple people, then we can maybe move it down a little bit lower on the workshop list of priorities,
Okay.
rather than moving it up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So Jack's had his hand up, so I think before the board enters into their deliberations, Jack, if you'd like to come up to the podium, please, and that's the requirement. You raised your hand, now it's, and if you can speak into the,
There's actually, I think I'm detecting a bit of a trend in town of small houses being built. There's 2 on Heel Road. There's one coming up on 235. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And I think it's probably fairly much indicative of the future of maybe small families moving to Lincolnville, working at home and wanting to build a modest house, which they could add on to later. So what I think I'd like to see is almost an invisible affordable housing happening in the town. I'm envisioning so that you don't really notice it. It's just being sure that we feed this natural trend that I think is coming. Make it a place which welcomes small houses and small families and home, possibly home occupations. I think it's a good goal.
yeah, thank you for that.
Hey, Jack?
Yeah.
Just one question. In the grand scheme of things, what is your definition of
Small,
yeah?
under 1,000 square feet probably.
Okay.
Yeah, 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
We all used to know these things when I was a kid. It was a 2-bedroom ranch, basically.
It's
Or a little cape.
doable.
That's what it was.
Speaking from experience.
And,
Yeah,
and, and,
yeah,
part
it
of, and part of the problem of this not being available is that there's expectations in the market that determine larger houses, more expensive houses. Subdivision developers just don't believe that they can sell small houses. I mean, we're working with psychology as much as anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for that, Jack.
Thank you. Yeah.
Susan, did you have any final thoughts?
Let's see, I think I covered all my points. I guess I would just, what Selectman Ray is suggesting is exactly what I would hope for. We're still getting started on our visioning process. I'm expecting a groundswell of interest. The couple of meetings we've had, public meetings, the first thing that comes up is affordable housing. So I know that's only one person, but we have a history of planning workshops, and it's always been a case. So I'm just saying, if there was a charter, so if somebody did come to the town office and said, this is something I'm really interested in and I have some background and expertise in, it would be possible for them to become involved.
Thank you. Yeah, so Mike, I think I would like to pick up on the point that you last made. Susan, thank you for a beautiful, comprehensive presentation. I think we all kind of got right to the heart of the conversation. I think it is a wonderful idea with a lot of merit. However, this Selectmen Priorities workshop that has come up multiple times, and we haven't been able to get to it because we've been working through all of the other things. So the bureaucrat part of me is going to say that leading up to budget season and looking at the backlog of projects that have been funded, that the voters have funded projects, other projects that don't necessarily require funding. We have a significant list of projects that both our voters have told us they want to have done, and that we just haven't been able to get to because we've been dealing with other things that cross our path or ideas that bubble up. And so this isn't to comment on the merit of any of them or the merit of this, because certainly this is an idea that is very, it's an idea that has a lot of merit in and of itself. But that being said, I think the wise path for the select board would be to very soon have this workshop on priorities so that we can see sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly all in one place so that we can deal with the pandemic backlog, deal with the things that we've been trying to play catch up on, because as low impact as I think this committee could be, any committee is not no impact to both our staff, resources, time, office space, our resources, and I want to see this done well and thoughtfully. And so I'm not saying postpone this for years, but I think the responsible thing to do would be to look at it within the scope of everything. And, who knows, it may come up right in the top list of top 10 stuff of it's doable, but I am reluctant to add something with this level of importance on a whim without the 5 of us taking a real responsible look at the other priorities. It's just so easy to look at some charismatic megafauna type thing like affordable housing is, and it's such a relevant topic right now. But I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't dig back into the other tasks that need our attention and the town office staff's attention. So that's my ask of the select board, is that we very much put this on the list of things that we discuss, and that potentially we can all agree on a date here tonight. There's a couple here that have been suggested. I could do December 5th. Kind of hoping that that's a date that everyone could agree to.
I gotta check with my people.
Who knew that you were going to be such a prima donna in this whole thing? Yeah.
I have a slightly different take. So I hear you on all that, and I don't want anything to be rushed, especially something as important as this. The idea of a housing committee has been brought up here many months ago. So it isn't a new challenge that we've been talking about. To what Susan said, I mean, this was in our 2006 comprehensive plan, and we, according to the metrics that are laid out, we didn't have affordable housing then. So we all agree affordable housing is a problem and a crisis, really, nationwide, and Lincolnville is no exception. That's not our fault. It's just it is what it is. I am not concerned about finding people to serve on a housing committee. There's that line in that movie, if you build it, they will come. Hope that's not too cheesy. people are drawn to different committees depending on their interests. I don't want to draw energy from other committees, but there very, very well may be people in Lincolnville who the other committees don't speak to them like this does. And so I don't see the harm in getting the ball rolling. So I'll just start by making a motion.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
I have a counterpoint.
Okay.
Because if this was adopted by the people of Lincolnville in 2006, and if it was such a great priority, why hasn't it been acted on in the last 16 years? And if we're actively rewriting the comprehensive plan now, I don't see the rush.
The big difference?
The rush in pushing it through now, like having to have it happen right now when I know some of the things that we have to work through, and adding something right now on top of that only serves to push everything else further down the list, regardless of its importance or necessity. I mean, that's just the functional truth of creating a committee, filling a committee. It takes time and resources away. And so, you know, are you aware of, do you have a list in your head of all of the like very necessary things that we have to deal with, and being okay with here tonight saying this is going to take priority on top of everything else?
I don't quite see it the same way. We have a long list of priorities. I don't see it as this taking priority over other things. I think we can walk and chew gum on a number of things. Ultimately, I would ask David and Susan to work together to come up with a draft charge. It would be in our next packet. We would discuss it. We would pass it. A call would go out to recruit people to serve on that committee, and they would do the heavy lifting. Obviously, there is the staff time. Well, there's having a time that they can meet in the town office, and they would give occasional updates to us. But I just think it's too important. And what Susan said, that we kind of have to do it before we hand in the comprehensive plan. And so it's not really, it doesn't sound like it's a nice to have. It's something. It's not like we have to do it right now, but why wait when, in terms of getting the ball rolling, it's about drafting a charge and passing it. And then once we have committee members, they can be doing the work now. I think it's too important to wait any longer.
Steve?
So when I was deciding to run for selectman, the biggest area I researched was affordable housing. Partly because I have two boys that were finding it incredibly hard to find a way to stay here in the community. The biggest thing I found as I looked around the community or looked around the state was that most communities that form a affordable housing committee accomplish nothing to date. It's a fool's errand. In almost every single case, there's very few success stories. And that's why, to me, I think we need to hold back just a little bit. This needs to be addressed. There's no way around it. But us forming an affordable housing committee and saying go is most likely doomed for nothing to actually occur. We need to sit back and research before we send some people off on their way. Is a regional approach the best? What is the best approach? We've got, what are we, a year and a half, 2 years from actually having a comprehensive plan? We've got a runway. We don't have to start this tomorrow. So I'm more inclined to, this is probably going to be top 10 on our priority list. But instead of sending David and Susan off to create a charter tonight, I would be more of let's put it on our priority list. I'll put my hand up to do some research on what's the regional options, what's the regional approach stuff look like. But I want to see this solved, but I think it's, we need to do some more homework before we say just go create a committee.
Well, I was the guy who kind of brought the whole charge thing up, and not out trying to convince anybody. However, I would disagree with you, Stephen, on saying that affordable housing committees go nowhere. That is, they have no success. I think it all depends on how we define success. Now, I don't think they're going to change the world and create affordable workplace housing in the town of Lincolnville. However, my guess is you get a few people who start investigating the issues, and they could come back to the board with information that we would then use in the discussions you're talking about. Do we go regional? How do we go regional? What questions do we want to look at, et cetera? I would like to let, as Josh said, those people, if we could find them, if they step forward, do some heavy lifting. Just a group of people who ask questions, do research. And staff time, I look at the charge as a cut and paste job that Susan and David could do in a half hour. I mean, she was.
No, we can't.
Yes,
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, you can. You can do it. I've seen you work before.
I appreciate the pat on the back.
Okay, so I'll
That's
give
a fallacy.
I'll give you 45 minutes an hour. No, I think the two of you could hammer that out like it's cut and paste. You gave language that I don't know if it passed muster with the board, because we have to review it, but it's certainly a start. And then to see if we get a few people to ask some of the questions that we are going to have to ask, or at least we'll be provided with some information prior to the discussion of it. That's all that I expect.
Well, I think you clarified one of the not hurdles in a way, but I'm not hearing necessarily that the board is on the same page in terms of what it will add. What is the widget that we are going to ask this affordable housing committee to do, other than to just say, we need people to populate an affordable housing committee. But then what, we leave it up to David and Susan to tell us what we need to tell, an ad hoc charge needs to come from a directive of the board specifically asking for tasks with clear timelines, with clear end goals. And I guess going back to the workshop is, as I said, this is an idea with merit. It deserves action, but it deserves action in a way that has clear direction, clear actionable goals and outcomes. And I don't hear us being there tonight. However, I feel that if we can look at it responsibly in the context of the other things that we also need to execute, that clarity would come. I feel that this deserves being done the right way.
Of course.
And I don't necessarily see pressing go tonight as being the most effective path. It is a path. It will be a longer, windier path, but it will be a path. And then we can pat ourselves on the back and say, well, we started tonight, but yeah. Yes.
I see this as a good path to do it. Steve, you had mentioned us needing to do the research before we hand it off to a committee. We've already brought it multiple times here. We're busy. The select board's busy. We don't have time to do that research. And so that's why we have committees. They can do the research and then come to us. And so, yeah, I'm because we're so busy, I don't know when we'll get to that research to then start a committee to do it. I think we need the committee to do that research to get the ball rolling. And in terms of us right now having the language for the charge, we have Susan and David. And Susan has been really looking into this issue. And so, that's what a draft charge is for. So we can look at that and say, what we like and don't like about it. So we really don't have the votes for this tonight, so I'm not going to make a motion, but I encourage us to really, let's have that priorities meeting as soon as we can, as soon as the five of us can meet and go from there.
And move this up, so we definitely give it the time it deserves.
Yeah, yes, and everything else.
Yeah.
This really,
there are other
this
things,
really
I know
isn't,
that.
I'm not trying to
I
kick
know
the
that.
can, I'm not trying to sweep this under the rug. I feel like I need to be really clear in the fact that, we have greater responsibilities that are immediate, and so we have to look at it all on an even plane. That's all. And and I certainly hope that you'll take everything that Susan provided, and if you have more to provide, that we'll take that into consideration going into a workshop for sure. Yeah.
I would just like to address two of your concerns lately.
Sure.
Your first question was, why didn't this happen 16 years ago? I think an important thing to keep in mind is what's different now than then is that they're not even using the word affordable so much. They were talking about workforce housing. It used to be that affordable housing was for people who were disabled or are chronically unemployed, for whatever reason, were unable to work.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's people who are working who can't afford to find housing, while our whole area is invaded by people who have so much money, money's not an object. Your second point is, I just want to refer you to Housing Goal 1, 2, and 3 on page 38 of the comprehensive plan. That's the charge right there. So it could be simpler than this, and it could take less time.
Well, Susan, I think it'll get addressed. It'll get done. And you're looking at people who do things slower than most mortals. That's who we are.
Well, and we will need your budget, we will need your plan eventually for the comprehensive plan, so your budget recommendations.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you for listening to me again.
Thank you very much. So back to this workshop, I have brought it up multiple times, and I think I brought it up every time this conversation comes up months ago. And part of that's my fault and part of it's David's fault. Sorry to throw you under the bus, but it really comes down to that fact of collating all of the things that really have to get done and haven't, and then all of the new wonderful things that are coming in. And so is there a date that folks can commit to? I cannot do the 21st.
12/5.
So if
12/5
works,
works.
it's an off Monday.
As long as it works for Kern.
Same
Going on a
time,
limb here.
same time as usual.
I'll tell your people it's okay.
I'll work on your people also.
Who are my people?
And just, as a point of clarity for anybody listening at home and folks here, a workshop is an opportunity for the select board to meet and kind of hash out a bunch of ideas. The public is always welcome to attend, but it isn't necessarily an opportunity to engage with the public, so that we can really just figure stuff out. And so I'm definitely really excited to talk about this and all of the other things and walk out of that workshop with some greater clarity so that we're all on the same page, both from the backlog of stuff, but then looking into the future of what's coming up with the comp plan, what's going to come up with the Heart and Soul project, what may come up with workforce housing, affordable housing, and all of the other really cool things that no doubt are going to come up. So thank you for, that is now being chiseled in stone, I think, right, David,
Yes.
somewhere?
Chiseled in paper on ink, with
Good.
ink.
So that's great. And again, Susan, please don't take this as defeat at
Oh, I'm taking this very personally.
all. But, we'll get to it and no doubt ask you for your help,
Don't
and
worry,
support.
I'm very persevering.
I have,
We can tell.
we know. But thank you for putting this on an agenda item also,
Yes,
so that we can
absolutely.
actually have a dialogue as opposed to
Good,
citizens
thank
forum. So don't go
Next
anywhere
item.
because next up,
Oh, my.
you're here to talk to us about sidewalks.
Yes, and once again, it's old business and you're tired of hearing me talk about this. But I gave you a little timeline here. Once again, it was in the comprehensive plan, page 52, public facilities and services goal number 4, investigate building sidewalk in center, Breezemere to community building to the town office. And then it came up again in the Lincolnville Center 2020 visioning process. We had a parent with a young child who brought this to your attention, and David brought DOT in. We had a walk with them last summer, and they looked at different options. It could be an extended shoulder, a few feet, just where it would be safe to walk. It could be done in sections rather than one fell swoop. So that's how the Lincolnville Improvement Association actually got started. If you read Diane O'Brien's books, the ladies made aprons and handkerchiefs and sold them, and they put in a wooden boardwalk, piece by piece in the beach so that they could roll their prams down, out of the mud and the muck. So do we have to do that again? Or can we talk to DOT and see exactly what might be possible? Could we investigate? I'm not asking you for $1 million Camden Rockport. I mean, that is, we don't need that in Lincolnville. But I would like you to know that the parent came to us as the Comp Plan Review Committee, appealed to us once again, what's happening? We talked with the DOT. Stephen Cole came here on 9th of May and said, we have this village partnership initiative. There's major infrastructure money available. And our whole purpose is not to do Route 1. Our purpose is to preserve what we have here, which is a small rural Maine town village, not just the intersection of a couple of state highways. So that was, he was here in May. Rory, the parent, came to the comp plan committee, came to my attention again. So I was driving through town last weekend. I saw a large gaggle of middle school children walking in the road. And because there's no sidewalks in the center, they're walking in the road. There's probably 6 or 8 of them. And they were stopping the oncoming traffic. They were just simply holding up their hands, stopping the oncoming traffic. That's what it takes, I guess, for kids to walk safely in this town. So then at Rory's invitation, I walked with her husband and her son and their dog as they walked to school on this road. Just a few, not far. I videoed it. I was hoping to show it, but my skills are less than anyone else. So it turned out to be too long of a video to show you, but I can assure you that as I walked and followed this little boy as he walked to school, the oncoming traffic included school buses and some cars that went all the way into the other lane. So now we've got people in the other lane trying to avoid the child walking in the sidewalk. There's no sidewalk. So what there is a white line and about 3, 4, 5 inches, of paving beyond the white line. And other than that, it's in the weeds and the rubble. So I would just say, as the cars crest that hill and head down toward the center, toward Petunia Pump, we have a child, and there are more children in town now. We have some new families with young children who's trying to walk to school, and it's not safe. So I'm not asking you for, esplanades and everything. I'm just saying, could we just do what it says in the comp plan, which is investigate building a sidewalk? What exactly are we talking about? What would be the minimal, what would be acceptable, just to make sure that children don't have to take their lives in their hands to walk around town?
So the first thing, and thank you for the recap. So to participate in the DOT program and their funding, you must engage their designers and their engineers, and it must be to their standards. And they have degrees of standards, but they are, engineered and designed with specific widths, specific materials, etc. And, that you referred to the Camden Rockport effort, which was 1,900 feet and cost in excess of $1 million.
Because there were curbs and esplanades, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about.
Because they entered into that funding program with the DOT, which is an 80-20 split. So, 20% of over $1 million is still a lot of money. And so in walking with the previous DOT representative that came and did the requested sidewalk area, were more than 2.5 times that distance. So the number that was offered to us from the DOT was around $3 million at the time. And that was a couple of years ago.
Did you get numbers from them?
Mm-hmm.
But on more than, on how many different kinds? I mean, for what only thing they would do was that price?
Yeah, I mean, they engineer to a particular standard. There's no, if you're going to participate in their funding programs, it has to be a particular design. It may not be the same level of esplanade and blinking lights that are right along Route 1, but it is still a significant build.
When you say 80-20, that's 80% covered by DOT and 20 by the town? Okay.
Correct. Money that has to be in hand. And so I'm not speaking for anyone here, but I don't think there's any one of us that wouldn't love that idea, but it is a massive financial undertaking. That would be us coming up with nearly $1 million, and I don't know how those numbers would change specifically now with the cost of fuel and paving and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, and unfortunately, besides the conversation we've had with Rory and yourself and the few people that came on the walk with us, there was a lot of enthusiasm for the folks that live right here. Mm-hmm. But there's that big scary number to make that big connection. But the DOT was very clear that you don't have to do it all at once.
Right.
And so getting back to where the voters have raised and appropriated funds mm-hmm. from the boat club to Breezemere. Mm-hmm. So we have funds for that. Yep. And at the time, I think the general consensus is that the board, we have those monies, let's get that rolling as a first step. And that was the strong indication from the DOT representative that was here last, is that, you know, it's a rolling application for these funds, and, you know, unless we have a room packed full of 100 people demanding, you know, even 100 people to get into $1 million debt on our behalf would be a significant conversation. But if we can approach it in this piece by piece way, we might be able to come up with a long-term plan on how to afford it. And so I think the board left it off before your unfortunate situation.
Which is the only reason I got hurt. That was intentional.
You
I
thwarted
threw
us.
myself
You thwarted
down on the
us.
ground.
So the board had appointed Selectman Ray to kind of convene the stakeholders and get some input from them, and see if a consensus, because there's been a lot of different opinions on how it should be done.
Exactly.
And see if we can reach a consensus, and then the board would take some action, which I think we're interested in doing.
Yeah, I along those lines, I talked with David Rowney a few months ago about that, and he was right neck deep in the park at the time, but he was more than willing to come up with not full-blown engineering studies, but studies which would indicate you're looking at this much pavement, this much material, that type of thing, and come up with some cost estimates and materials, labor, things like that. So at least we would have that information going to the meeting.
And that would be getting that ball rolling with the program with the DOT.
Well, what I would like to see in this meeting would be nice if we could contact somebody from the DOT, Stephen Cole or whomever, and to make sure that what we are talking about is compliant with their future plan, or any future plans with the DOT, to make sure we're not spending however much money this is, and they'll look at it and say, no, we can't follow up on that.
Right.
That's totally
Because
non-compliant.
ideally, we could take our little pile of money.
Sure.
Because let's be honest, it's not
It's not much, yeah.
not massive,
No.
and leverage that to get an 80% contribution in working with them to build that, so that's
I'd
the
like to know.
first stepping stone.
If that's a possibility, it'd be great,
How
yeah.
much do we have?
Oh, golly.
No, I thought it was 10, 20,000.
No,
I
it's.
think Mike's in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
10, 20.
it's not,
I think it's 10.
I think it's 10.
Yeah, yeah.
I hate to do that off my head, so.
Which is what,
just a hair over
which is
that.
5.5 yards in today's prices.
Yeah.
We're talking 20 feet.
Yeah, so, yes, Karen.
So I'm not going to discount the danger of walking up Route 235, especially as a school child, unsupervised, going back and forth on the road, and it's tough to navigate a vehicle down through there. It always has been since I went to that school, and that's quite a while ago. I was part of that meeting with the DOT, and I had a lot of questions about alternate routes. There's a nature trail that goes from the library to the school. I asked the DOT if there would be any participation to make that safer, to make it more enjoyable, but yet I was surprised, and the answer that I got was yes, we have participated in projects like that, but the group that was there who seemed to be promoting sidewalks appeared to be narrow-minded when it came to that type of information. I'm disappointed in that. It's safer, and as a matter of fact, the young lady that came to you, that trail is right behind her house, which would make it a lot safer for her little boy.
I guess I didn't hear that suggestion on your part. I think
Well,
that's worth considering.
A lot of people dismiss what I'm saying for obvious reasons. But, this is a situation where, yes, we need to do something and have needed to do something for a long time. But in my mind, we need to think outside the box too, to help preserve what we already have, and maybe use what we already have. I don't know, it seemed like free money to enhance a nature trail to me, but yet also make it safe for our children to go, well, not free money, but a huge participation to go from the school to the library, which was a big part of what the ask was. And everybody knows, I tell it like it is. And I say, well, why don't you, I said to her, I said, why don't you put your kid on the nature trail? Maybe he doesn't know it's there. Maybe your kids don't know it's there. And that wasn't even considered. So I figured, oh, another dumb idea from Kern. But it just makes sense to me to explore all our resources before we go possibly taking people's land to put in a sidewalk. I get it that the kids want to go to the store, and I get it that they want to come down through Main Street and all that. I get it. But we could keep them safer if they're not on that street. Really.
Maybe we need a committee.
Just saying. Absolutely. But I'm just saying, okay? It is frustrating a little bit for someone like me to keep my mouth shut when something like that isn't even considered. I thought it was a pretty good idea. But, and it's something we already have. It doesn't take care of the problems of coming from the school to the store and down into the center where some of these other kids, I understand that. But it certainly takes care of going from the school to the library and the library to the school and Breesmere Park and things of that nature, and places like that. So, yeah, we have a list. We really do.
Yeah. Well, and it really feels like an insurmountable goal to try to sidewalk the center. But we have a little bit of funds. We definitely have interest. We have years of interest in getting the sidewalk from the library, the boat club, down to the park. You know, that seems like a wonderful place to start, because certainly it would be an anchor point one way or the other, and engage the DOT. You know, I know we had tasked you with kind of herding the cats, but I guess through our discussion tonight, certainly sidewalks at large should be part of our priority conversation also.
Yeah.
Just so that we can get a clear sort of big picture about where we may want to go with this. But does it make sense to retask you with herding the cats and the stakeholders and getting some sort of consensus, or should we just re-engage with Steve? Why can I not?
Cole.
I can never remember his name. Steve Cole. And slowly get that ball rolling.
Well, I'm sorry, Dave.
No.
I would suggest talking to us DOT first to make sure before we end up cat herding or whatever you want to call that.
Right.
Because they might be able to tell us how the nature trail would fit into their goals. And like I said, I'm most fearful of us doing something or starting something down there, and they would turn around and look at it 5 years later and say, huh? You know, and so you guys don't qualify, we're going to the next town, type of thing.
Right.
So it'd be nice to have them on board real quick.
Yeah. David, what thought did you have?
Well, you got a number of thoughts. We've got in terms of sidewalks, we have two projects that I'm going to talk briefly about. The first was was brought up several years ago, was the immediate concern of the link from the crosswalk from the boat club to the library to Breesmere Park because of the magnitude of number of children during the summertime not safely traversing that stretch. Subsequent to that, Rory made a plea, and we've talked about that sidewalk. While they're connected, they're really separate. We had, or potentially separate. We had money appropriate to actually construct something by the Veterans Park, connecting from Breezemere through the Veterans Park, in front of the library to the crosswalk. At one point, we had donations of material or suggested donations of materials or funds for equipment and whatnot for that short stretch from the boat club, which we don't know if that offer is still active. We certainly did not have consensus even on the 300 feet or whatever it is of how that would be built, where it would be built, what it would be built with, which was kind of the focus of what was assigned to Mike to see if he could, or Selectman Ray, to see if he could get to that consensus. The other part, the bigger picture of sidewalks in the center, dovetails nicely into what the comprehensive plan is actually could and should and will be doing as they move forward. We will have, we always do, more requests for things and funds and constructing than others have thought we'd been able to raise the money to do. We have sidewalks, we have roads, I mean, it wasn't too many months ago, we were sitting here listening to people talk about muddy roads. We have infrastructure at the harbor, we have the parks. Part of the comprehensive plan effort is to make sure these things are priorities for our community. And if so, what's the capital improvement plan? That's part of the comprehensive plan, to say, here's all your wish list. Here's how to fund various portions of them. And not to say that things have to come to a screeching halt while we wait for this, but things or projects of this type of magnitude need to be vetted with other projects of similar magnitude to decide where our priorities are. And I'm going to venture a guess right now that we don't even have a good list of all those potential projects. So I think you ought to be considering parallel tracks, a small test project, demonstration project, whatever you want to call it, of 300 feet, or I don't even know how far it is, library to Breezemere, while a parallel tract of the bigger picture of sidewalks in the center gets explored, along with fixing Calderwood Road, doing something at the pier when that falls apart in 20 more years.
Yep.
Otherwise, the short stretch is going to fall victim to the longer process.
Right. Yep.
Not to say maybe it should. Maybe that's kind of why it was advocated to be part of the priority discussion. But I think there's an opportunity to do a short demonstration project while you're planning the rest.
Well said.
You see,
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Susan?
I would just part by saying, I think you don't have to call this a sidewalk project, you can call it the trailways. It could include some alternatives.
Inclusive walking opportunities. Thank you, Susan. Rosie, come on up.
Just a comment.
Yep.
3 years ago plus, there was a committee formed to look at the sidewalks from Boat Club to Breezemere. And I would have to say, nothing's happened. That really, no motion is in gear in that. So another committee was formed, taking up people's time, and nothing has come from that. The committee could not come to any kind of an agreement, is what I'm trying to tell you. It's not that, it just, they could not agree. So that never moved forward.
Right. So that's why the effort, when it came back to light funded, was to have a selectman convene that stakeholder group, which may be those same people on the committee, of which I believe you were one, and and try to see if there was consensus amongst what had been approved by the voters to fund from A to B. And then for Selectman Ray to report back to this group to say there's no consensus, or maybe there is. And if there was no consensus, then it falls back to the five of you to decide to be, Solomon and split the baby or whatever you want to do, so that we can either abandon the project or do a project or go in a different path.
Certainly, to me, it feels like after that presentation by Steve Cole, it's within our grasp to execute that test project of that short section, with or without the input of the stakeholders. It's nice to have input. I'm not opposed to it at all, but I think that they, in a very gentle way, said that they're going to do it to their standards if we're going to take advantage of their funding. So
It makes sense.
I don't want to upset people or have people say this is the hill I'm going to die on in terms of what's okay for a sidewalk. But then the only way we're going to get it done is engaging with the DOT. The DOT is going to turn around and say, well, this is the minimum safe sidewalk that we will help you build.
Right.
So I guess I'm just curious in your thoughts of where we want to go now. Do we want to go back to trying to get a consensus of the stakeholders and then revisit this conversation?
My personal opinion is I don't think there's going to be a consensus, because I think there is a group that will argue the materials, the material base and the finished product with the DOT participating. And that's huge for us as a town because of the monies that are available.
Right.
So I understand where they're coming from with that, but we also don't want to be replacing it 2 years down or 3 years down the road as well. There's a reason why the DOT, amongst safety issues and other, that they hold it to a standard, a minimum, but yet their standard is there's a certain product that you have to use. So that's going to be tough, and I would be willing to bet that you're not going to get a consensus. If we're pushed to move forward, then we're not going to be able to poll the stakeholders. We'll have to make that decision ourselves.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't, without coming right out and just spelling it right out, I think it's easy to understand where that's going to go.
Yeah. No, I think it's kind of destined to go that way.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
It is. I think it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is, but at the same time, Kurt, I think we kind of, I was going to say, I think we owe all those stakeholders a chance to find out what is acceptable to the Maine Department of Transportation.
Absolutely.
And let them weigh in. And I would think that the DOT says, hey, we can give you a lot of money to continue this or to make this better. They might be more willing to reach a consensus. But I understand, the whole
It's tough.
wheelbarrow full of, that doesn't go anywhere, I know that.
Yeah.
So I think, sounds like we're all on the same page. I think we should reach out to the DOT, find out what they deem acceptable, the options. And they may say, well, there's one option that's acceptable, but find out what the options are and have Mike have a stakeholder meeting and say, if we want the DOT to contribute, these are the possible options, or here's the option. What do all of you think? And then we go from there.
I agree.
I agree.
So would you like me to approach David Roundy and ask him to come up with some easy, some measurements for us? So we can then go to the DOT and say.
I think we've got something in the works.
Do you? Okay,
Yeah.
good, okay. Then I'll let you go to David.
Just don't let me slide again.
Yeah, so I think going back to the previous direction from the board is yourself and David coordinated time
Okay.
to get those parameters and present those parameters to the stakeholders and get
Whatever input.
whatever input on that, whether
Okay.
they can find it in their hearts to get behind it so that we can take advantage of the funding, or if they hate it, and then we have a different
And
conversation.
it may well be, and as it was originally envisioned, that stretch being a locally funded option. Make no, the reality is if you're going to use state money, you're probably looking at 2020, fill in the blank,
Right.
not 2023,
Yeah,
to do anything. It's
Yeah.
just that our funding cycle, their funding cycle.
Yeah.
And the abilities to actually see progress on the ground. If it's going to happen soon, it's going to happen locally. And if 200 feet needs to get replaced, it's not the end of the earth. Or picks up at that point and goes the rest of the way, and we live with 200 feet of town-owned stuff for 20 years. Okay. It'll be in and done.
all right.
I just have a quick question about the nature trail. I've never been on it. I want to walk it this week. Is
It'll
it
change your life.
is it obvious where it is? Is it on town land?
Mhm.
The whole thing? And if I went in with loppers, would anyone care?
Yes.
Mike Ray would have a.
I would have a fit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you would have to come to the Conservation Commission
Okay.
and plead your case for bringing loppers onto the, yeah. No, I don't think it'd be a problem there, just, no, it's just a trail, it's a legal trace thing, we try to keep it clear and maintain.
Okay,
There's
so
a
there
bridge
are-
going over a brook, which is now in decent shape, et cetera, et cetera. It's marked well, it's at the parking lot. It's marked well, so it says nature trail. And the other end comes out, behind the school, the field, athletic fields, that's not marked. And if we wanted it to be actually a pedestrian way to fit in, we want to, do some serious signage.
Yeah.
And some more maintenance, I'm sure.
Are you talking about the nature trail from Breezecare Park to the school?
Yeah.
Well, I've been with loppers, so have you, Mike. And so Lakes and Ponds keeps that open. We've been cutting Phragmites for 3 years now.
I know.
So.
No, but Susan, I couldn't give you guys the credit. It's the Conservation Commission that should be getting the credit.
I'm still here.
Thank you. All right, so we have the next step in that regard, but also nodding of heads to have a larger, big picture sidewalk conversation as part of our priorities workshop.
Definitely, yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, super. Thank you all. And gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience. We have an update from the fire department. I know you guys find all this stuff super thrilling, so. Yes.
It's one of those guys there, yeah.
I think I was on first.
Welcome, Chief.
Tom Fullerton, Fire Chief. Do we start with the mountain rescue team?
Wherever you like.
Okay, so the town has, or the fire department has a utility truck that was purchased for moving our access tools for car accidents. When we received the new engine 4, that truck was taken out of service because engine 4 took those tools as well as all the firefighting equipment onto it. And the goal was trying to maybe donate that piece of apparatus because it's been in this community since its conception, volunteering. So I approached Jonathan and Matt about if they could use it for the Coastal Mountain Rescue Team. They already use the center station for training. They use it for housing their equipment. This vehicle is a 1-ton commercial van type setup with a utility body on the back. I think the benefit to the Coastal Mountain Rescue Team would be that all of their equipment could be housed in the truck all the time. So when it's needed in our community or other communities, they can grab it and go. The other thing that I'm asking to donate it to them also is permission to keep it in the fire station, so that it would be housed there forever. The Coastal Mountain Rescue Team has procured all the funds, I believe, to insure it, to register it, and to maintain it at this point. So that's why it hasn't happened until now, because they didn't want to take possession of it until they could be fiscally responsible. So it's, yeah, I mean, that's where everybody on the fire department would like to see this piece of apparatus go.
It's great. We haven't or have declared that surplus.
You have not.
Okay.
And if it had, trying to think what the article, depending on its value,
I know.
you may be able to dispose of it as you see fit. If it has, I'm making this up, if it was worth $100,000, which I know it's not, or it's not to me, you would have to seek town meeting approval, but I believe it's maybe $5,000 or something. Was the cutoff where you can dispose of.
We can declare it surplus.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah, we could do a little more.
Yeah, so we'd have to just look
Just
into.
to clear it, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the vintage is 1994. It's pretty old. I don't think it has a value of even $5,000,
But I mean, just sort of general quick take from the board.
It's great. It's a great
I mean,
idea. Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
like an awesome use.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
awesome.
The other part that the board needs to consider is if we're going to house it, the town needs to have some sort of lease, memorandum of understanding, or something similar with whoever is going to keep it there, so that they know, when they can get in, when they can't, which may be 24/7, 365, I don't know, the details. And then
Yeah.
if the truck catches fire and burn, or it's in the building that burns down around it, it's on that, all those little details that, aren't ever going to occur until we don't have some sort of arrangement on a piece of paper.
Yes.
But we can certainly do that and make it, the proverbial $1 a year, if that's what something you want.
Mhm. Yeah. If it can be useful to you guys,
Excellent.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I've got for that, unless there's any other questions.
So did I get a nodding ahead that we ought to invest some time in getting that
Yes.
Yes.
approved and necessary stuff back to you and to them?
Yes.
Okay.
Happy to work on that. Awesome.
We may have something canned that we can just change the name and send it to you.
Excellent. And then the other thing that's on the agenda is David kindly put out an RFP for us to try to attract some architects for our beach station. And it was pretty underwhelming, the results. We had 2 firms answered. One firm answered in that they were interested. The other one said they were interested, but they didn't have the time.
Oh, great.
Thanks.
And I think the reality is you look around and there's construction going on everywhere. So the beach station committee and myself met, and we're not in a real huge hurry to make this happen. We have time, so it might be good for us just to take a step back, regroup, maybe talk with some architects, firms that are locally, see what a more reasonable amount of time would be to get an actual proposal from them. If we need to put out, say, a year, or maybe 2 years, or 3 years, or something like that. But I just wanted to make you all aware that we were kind of just going to slow down and put a stop on it. And it's not the end of the world. The beach station we have now works perfectly fine. But just trying to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know about perfectly fine.
Well, it's not leaking water. It's still upright.
It's adequate.
It's adequate, yes.
Okay.
It seems like a reasonable response to an unreasonable
I don't know any
situation.
architects.
It's none. It's none. None.
There's none.
Yeah.
Certainly not, certainly not two sitting in the room.
There will be conversations going on between myself and the two over here. But, maybe just get some advice.
Yeah, great.
It's the time frame issue.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of
Always is.
That's what I figured is the time frame. So, that's it for me. Unless you have any other questions.
Well, shoot. Well, thank you for waiting around so long. We appreciate the update. Yeah, and thank you all for coming in. Do you want to
just give?
Yeah.
So, Matthew Silverio with Coastal Mountain Search and Rescue. Really appreciate you considering the vehicle. Some of you may or may not know that we are a state certified team, and we respond to requests from the Warden Service, Baxter State Park, and Acadia National Park. And we did a joint training here in Camden Hills recently with the other state high angle teams. And one of the things that came up was the ability to respond to a technical rescue around the state. Because currently nobody has a vehicle. It's only in trailers of the various different teams, and it's all, all over the state, really. So this would be a huge advantage for us to be able to respond to, in particular, Acadia as a backup team for technical rescue incidents, which we already train and are on paper a backup for them, but it would make it much more advantageous for us. So,
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Great. Yeah, Steve.
Hey, how many miles on that vehicle?
3,700. Yes.
Well,
100?
Just classic. Steve.
How many rescues a year do you guys respond to?
Locally, it varies quite a bit, anywhere from 1 or 2 to 10 or 12. Statewide, it also varies quite a bit. It depends on the scale of the search, but I would say on average at least 1 a month. It's the wardens deal with as much as they can, but when they've got too much going on, they call in volunteers to help them. Yeah. The other thing that we're going to work with Midco School of Technology for maintaining that vehicle.
Perfect.
We already
Good
have an
idea.
exchange program with them for their outdoor education program. So they bring students into our team as well. And so we're going to work with them on updating the vehicle and maintaining it.
That's great.
Good choice.
Yeah, super. Thanks, Matt. Wonderful. Thanks again, gentlemen, for hanging out. Let's see if there's anything else there. Let's move along to board, committee, and commissions. We have some resignations and appointments.
Maybe.
So, unfortunately, due to career changes, we have a motion for a resignation first.
I mean, you got it.
I move the board accept with regret the resignation of Drew Strout from the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. And then we have another resignation.
I move that the board accept the resignation of Pat Shannon from the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And having made that motion, she has an interest in a different position.
So, I move that the board appoint Pat Shannon as an alternate member of the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee with a term expiring in June 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Yes.
So, as the chair of the Comp Plan Review Committee, the charter I'm working with says that there are 5 voting members and only 2 alternates, and we already have, I'm currently an alternate, last I heard, and John Pinsens is the second alternate that was appointed not long ago.
You're an alternate and the chair?
Somebody had to do it.
I think you need to be a full-on member,
Yeah.
Yeah, what,
and
yeah.
then Pat can
Yeah, that seems.
resume.
That would, well, she seems to think I'm illegitimate completely, but I that would be appropriate to.
Absolutely.
Well, can we make that happen tonight? I don't see
Yeah.
why not.
Yeah, the John thing slipped through the cracks, I think,
Yeah.
being the other alternate. So the list I looked didn't have him on it. But we did do that.
So we just made an illegal motion.
No.
Well, we appointed someone to a position that doesn't exist, so we need to make a motion to retract the previous motion.
I move that we retract the previous motion where we appointed Pat Shannon as an alternate member of Comprehensive Plan Review.
Sorry.
And seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? And so, do you want to be a regular member?
I would be willing to serve as a regular member.
Excellent, we have an opening for a regular member.
Do I need 2 references?
No. Would someone care to make a motion, please?
I move that the board appoint Susan Savelio as a permanent member of the Comprehensive Plan Committee with a term expiring
June 2023.
in June 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much. And now that we have an opening as an alternate position in the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee, would anyone care to make another
We could
motion?
do this, yes. So I move that the board appoint Pat Shannon as an alternate member of the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee with the term expiring in June 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion. All those in favor? Congratulations. You now have 2 alternates, regular members.
You got to stop.
It makes sense that the chair is a regular member.
It does.
It's good. Okay, all is right with the world. Thank you, Susan, for that clarification. Yeah, all right. And moving along, we do have a poll application from the Central Maine Power Company within a right-of-way of Thurlow Road. We both have had Will Brown and David Brownie look at it and are satisfied, and so can I have a motion?
I move that the board approve and sign the application for pole location CMP work order number 80100049698 for utility pole to be located adjacent to Thurlow Road.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? None. All those in favor? Thank you very much. And David, would you care to chat about our carbon monoxide event?
Sure. So back in September, we had a furnace. Fire department was nice enough to show up, and as everybody was standing in the parking lot, and opened up and aired out the building, and then we went back, solved the problem, went back to work. Which prompted someone to say, do we have carbon monoxide detectors? No. We're not required to have them, as I understand the law, but it is an option. We contacted Seacoast Security, who has our intrusion system, smoke, heat, water, whatever, temperature sensors, and asked them for what it would take to equip the building with carbon monoxide, and have that quote. Of course, we don't have any money set aside for that, so we gave you a couple options, and I guess that's where we are.
It seemed to me that for the quote we received, contingency is a perfect option for this.
Correct.
Does anyone care to make a motion, please?
I move to have 3 wireless carbon dioxide detectors installed at the town office and connected to the existing alarm system for the cost of $615.09 as proposed by Seacoast Security, and funds for this work to be paid for from the contingency account.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion.
I would like to have that amended to say carbon monoxide.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oh, no, wow, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Who typed
You're
that?
right. I thought you meant dioxide too.
We've got real problems if we've got carbon dioxide. Was there a second to the amendment, the amended amendment?
Oh, I will do that now, yes.
Okay, so we've
Second.
amended the motion, and there's a second. Further discussion.
I will just take this as a good time to give a public service announcement that people should consider having at least one a joint smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector where their boiler is, to prevent this potentially happening in someone's home and them not realizing it.
Yeah, thank you. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor? And are you abstaining?
Will abstain.
Okay, thank you for that. Excellent, thank you all. And moving along, do we have a broadband update, Steve or Josh?
We do, a good one. So we had a meeting last Thursday. We met with Susan Corbett, and we looked at statistics from the town of population, breakdown of age and race and all of that. We talked about different ways that we could improve broadband access in Lincolnville, community hotspots. We talked about would LCI consider sponsoring community hotspots. We talked about the possibility of perhaps a broadband subsidy that the town may want to offer. So really just talk about all the different options that could be in the digital equity plan. And I am bringing forth a request to the select board. We would like more time to work on this charge. And so we're wondering if it could be extended to December 27th. So that's, I think, the last select board meeting of the year, and we would give our presentation that day with the feasibility study as well as with the digital equity plan. One thing to keep in mind is there will be a work plan attached to the digital equity plan, and that's something that the broadband committee would like to work on in the future. But we don't have to worry about that until we actually have that work plan, and then we can go from there. But in terms of implementing it, members would like to continue working on this important issue.
Okay.
So I guess I would ask if we could have David draft, just simply bringing up that date, and we could review that draft at our next meeting.
Yep.
Sure.
I would just add that last 2 meetings, I wasn't the one before, but this last one I was attending remotely, the spirit and the interest level of the community members is very engaged in the topic, and moving away from the focus on what can we do to expand it into every household, which we're addressing differently, and focused on how to address digital equity is actually really cool to see the energy level.
Great. That's good to hear. Yeah, thank you for that.
Welcome.
Any other questions for Josh or Steve on broadband? All right. Cool. Thank you, gentlemen. And Kern, do you have a selectman update for us?
No, I don't have anything. I will for next meeting.
Okay.
We're going to have a solid waste meeting on Wednesday.
Great.
Can't wait.
Josh, anything?
No, that's all.
Mike, anything?
Yeah, no, I guess I should make a plea for additional volunteers. If anybody out there or anybody in the room wants to volunteer at the woodshed this season. It looks like it's going to be extremely busy year. We've got 5 people for the first day, and I'm sure numbers will pick up as things get colder. So anyway, and we've only got 3 people signed up to schlep the wood, load cars. If anybody out there wants to spend a couple hours on Saturday helping out, give me a call. So give David a call. However you like.
Thank you. All right.
David, I put you on the spot. Sorry.
That's all right, I'll give him your phone number.
Yeah, okay, you do.
And still remaining optimistic that we will have an EMS review committee meeting despite no one having responded, except for one person saying they won't be there. But keeping fingers crossed. So, yeah.
Masks. But when is that EMS review meeting?
Thursday.
Thursday, what time?
6:30.
Okay. Thursday. Yeah, okay. I'll be here.
If we have a quorum, we'll be here.
Yeah.
All right, so moving along to treasurer and payroll warrants to approve and sign.
I move that the board approve and sign the treasurer's and payroll warrants.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. And if there is no further business the board wishes to attend to, can we have a final motion, please?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much. Thanks, guys, for staying through the whole